I want you to imagine, just for a moment, that you are standing on a flat, sandy beach,
Like,
and it is 2,600 years ago. You're looking out at the horizon, like right where the sky meets the water, and you're trying to figure out what exactly the Earth is resting on.
right, because obviously it has to be resting on something.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
maybe it's a giant pillar of rock just plunging down into the dark, or I don't know, an endless ocean.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's giant turtles all the way down.
Which, honestly, is the most natural, intuitive assumption in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, if you drop a stone on that beach, it falls until it hits the ground.
Yeah, gravity.
Right. So therefore, the ground itself must be supported by something underneath it, otherwise it would just fall too.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much the absolute unquestioned consensus of human logic for millennia.
But then along comes this man who, using just pure deduction, I mean, no telescopes, no satellites, no math, beyond basic geometry, really, he realizes the impossible.
It really is wild.
He looks at that exact same horizon and deduces that the Earth isn't resting on anything. It is entirely unsupported, just floating freely in the middle of this vast, infinite space.
Which is arguably one of the most astonishing, counterintuitive leaps of imagination in human history.
Oh, absolutely.
To look at a world where gravity dominates, your every waking moment, and just imagine a place where gravity essentially cancels itself out.
So today, we are taking a deep dive into the mind of that man. His name is Anaximander of Miletus. He was born around 610 BC in this really bustling port city in Ionia, which is in modern-day Turkey.
Yeah.
We're talking about a guy who essentially birthed the scientific method. He gave us the first known prose writings on nature in the Western world, and he's rightly known today as the father of cosmology.
And our mission in this deep dive is to trace how Anaximander's brilliant and sometimes totally bizarre, but entirely revolutionary ideas just shifted human understanding.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to the bizarre stuff.
Oh, for sure. But he took a world that was ruled by the moody, unpredictable whims of gods and proposed a universe that was actually governed by mechanical geometric laws.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I really don't want to frame Anaximander as just some, dusty historical figure in a toga reciting poetry.
Right, he wasn't that at all.
No, this guy was a rogue intellectual. He dared to question literally everything that everyone else just took for granted. So before we get into his massive breakthroughs, we kind of need to understand the world he was born into. Like, if you're a Greek citizen in the 6th century DC, how do you explain how the world works?
Well, you have to picture a society that is just completely saturated with mythology.
Okay.
Like if there was a thunderstorm, it wasn't a complex meteorological event. It was literally Zeus hurling lightning bolts in a fit of rage.
Just a guy having a bad day up there.
Exactly. Or if the sea suddenly turned rough and swallowed a trading ship, it was because Poseidon was in a bad mood that Tuesday. The entire cosmos was basically viewed as a divine monarchy.
Supernatural beings establishing order by violently subduing chaotic forces, like the Olympians destroying the Titans.
Right.
It's a universe of intense divine micromanagement. There are no natural laws, just the whims of kings in the sky.
And that is the exact paradigm that Anaximander shattered. He looks at nature and proposes something radically different. He says the cosmic order is not monarchic, it's geometric.
Geometric.
Yeah, he introduces this concept of isonomy, which means equal rights, or like a balance of forces in nature.
Wait, isonomy. That sounds suspiciously like politics, like early democratic theory, almost.
You've hit on the core issue there. That is a wildly crucial connection. During this archaic period in Greece, city-states were evolving.
Right, they're moving away from absolute kings.
Exactly, moving away from tyrants and toward these early localized forms of democracy. The demos, the people, were starting to make decisions in an assembly located in the agora, which was the physical, symmetrical center of the city.
Wait, are you saying he looked at a town hall meeting and basically used that to invent astrophysics?
Essentially, yes.
That's incredible.
Anaximander projects this brand new political order directly onto the universe. He says, look, just as our society is no longer ruled by a king on a mountain, but is balanced by citizens acting equally from the center of the city, so too is nature.
Oh, wow.
There's a symmetry to the world, a mechanical equilibrium. The forces of nature are like citizens in an assembly, checking and balancing each other.
That is just a profound realization. Like, human political evolution directly inspired the invention of natural physics.
Yeah?
Our understanding of the universe was just a reflection of how we structured our own society. But, he wasn't developing these ideas in a total vacuum. He was part of the Milesian school of thought, and he had a very famous teacher.
Right, he learned from Thales of Miletus, who's often called the first philosopher of the Western tradition.
Thales made some massive leaps himself, right?
He did. He tried to find a single underlying material that makes up everything in the universe. And Thales famously concluded that everything, at its core, is derived from water.
Okay, but if Thales thought the universe was made of Lego bricks and those base bricks were all made of water, I just don't see how that logically works.
Oh, so?
Well, water is fundamentally wet and cold. How do you get dry earth from wet water? Or fire? If everything was inherently wet and cold, wouldn't it have completely extinguished all the dry and hot elements a long, long time ago?
Yep, and that logical roadblock is exactly what Anaximander saw. What's fascinating here is Anaximander's method of thinking.
Okay.
Because before him, if you were a student in the ancient world, you essentially had two choices.
Yeah.
You either blindly accepted your master's doctrine as absolute truth, or you rejected it entirely and started a rival school.
Right, there wasn't a lot of middle ground.
Exactly. But Anaximander does neither.
He threads the needle.
He takes Thales' core premise that there is a single underlying reality to the universe, and he critically improves upon it. He spots the exact flaw you just mentioned, the water problem, and then proposes a more robust model.
Which is basically the very heartbeat of the modern scientific method. You don't throw out the entire hypothesis, you just refine it based on new logic.
Precisely.
So because he realizes no single observable element, like not water, not fire, not earth, can be the origin of everything because they all actively destroy each other, he has to invent a completely new foundational concept.
And he calls it the apeiron.
The apeiron.
Yeah, it translates roughly to the indefinite, the infinite, the boundless, or the unlimited. It is an eternal, ageless, primordial mass.
So not a specific physical thing we can touch.
Right. Think of it as a substance that has no specific physical qualities that we can perceive. It isn't hot, it isn't cold, it isn't wet, and it isn't dry. But it contains the raw potential for all of these opposites to emerge.
It's like the ultimate cosmic blank canvas, or almost like a cosmic bank account.
I like that.
And there's this surviving fragment of Anaximander's actual writing, which was passed down through later philosophers like Simplicius, that describes how this works. He says that the elements give to each other justice and recompense for their injustice in conformity with the ordinance of time.
It's just a stunningly poetic way to describe what we would later call the laws of thermodynamics.
Okay, wait, explain that connection for me. How does cosmic justice translate to thermodynamics?
Well, think about the changing of the seasons as a massive balancing act of energy.
Okay.
If winter, which is characterized by the cold and the wet, takes over for a few months, it essentially commits an injustice against the hot and dry. It takes more than its fair share of the system's energy.
Oh, I see.
So over time, summer has to return to exact its recompense. It pays back the debt. When one element takes too much power, the underlying apeiron forces a systemic balance. The universe is a closed loop of continuous equal exchange.
That is mind-blowing, and this conceptual leap resonates all the way into modern physics, doesn't it? I saw a note in our sources about Max Born.
Yes, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist Max Born. In the 20th century, he was actually commenting on Werner Heisenberg's work in quantum mechanics.
Right.
Heisenberg suggested that all elementary particles are just different manifestations, or like quantum states, of one single underlying primordial substance.
And Born made the connection.
He did. Max Born pointed at that and said, we should actually name this foundational quantum substance the apeiron.
So an ancient Greek guy in 610 BC essentially pre-named the foundational substance of quantum mechanics.
Pretty much.
That alone is a legacy. But if the entire universe is this endless, boundless, infinite apeiron that creates a pretty massive mechanical problem, where exactly does the Earth fit inside an infinite void?
Well, this brings us to what the modern physicist Carlo Rovelli calls the first great scientific revolution in history. Anaximander has to figure out the shape and position of the Earth.
Because Thales, his teacher, thought the Earth was a flat disk floating on an infinite ocean of water, right?
Right.
Which just brings us back to the giant turtles problem. Like, Thales just swapped out turtles for infinite water. The water still has to rest on something.
Precisely. It doesn't solve the problem of gravity at all. But Anaximander proposes a purely mathematical, mechanical model of the world. He determines that the Earth is actually shaped like a drum or a cylinder.
A cylinder.
Yeah, he even calculates the proportions, stating its height is 1/3 of its diameter. We live on the flat, circular top of this cylinder.
Okay.
And the turning point is his claim that this cylinder is floating in the absolute center of the infinite space of the apeiron.
Okay, so if it's just floating in the void, why doesn't it fall?
He answers that with the principle of indifference.
Indifference.
Yeah, because the Earth is in the exact mathematical center of the infinite. It has equal distance and equal forces acting upon it from all conceivable sides.
Okay, I think I'm following.
Therefore, it has no logical reason to fall in one direction over any other direction. In an infinite space, there is no absolute down.
Let me see if I can visualize this. It's like a perfectly balanced tug of war.
Yes.
Like if you have a rope and you have 1,000 people pulling on it with the exact same strength from a perfect sphere of directions all around it, the rope doesn't move.
Exactly.
It simply hovers in place, locked by the tension. So the Earth is caught in this perfect web of cosmic symmetry.
That is a perfect analogy. The philosopher Karl Popper called this one of the boldest, most revolutionary, and most portentous ideas in the whole history of human thinking.
Why portentous? Like, what does a floating cylinder actually unlock?
Because once you accept that the Earth is floating freely, entirely unsupported, you unlock the three-dimensional cosmos.
Oh, because before, people thought there was a bottom.
Right. Before Anaximander, people assumed the sun and stars just kind of moved in a semicircular dome over our heads and then maybe sneaked back around the rim of the Earth at night.
Like a ceiling.
Yes. But if the Earth is floating, it means the stars, the moon, and the sun are actually passing underneath the Earth and coming back up the other side.
Wow. It turns the universe from a ceiling into a sphere.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have a floating cylinder Earth. But once he established that, it created a massive new problem. If the gods aren't driving fiery chariots across the dome of the sky, what exactly are those glowing lights moving around us?
Well, he had to invent a completely mechanical explanation for the heavens. And his solution is both an incredible marvel of ancient engineering thought and, honestly, hilariously wrong in its physical details.
I can't wait for this.
He proposes that at the origin of the universe, a giant sphere of flame surrounded the Earth like the bark around a tree.
Okay.
Eventually, this fiery bark broke apart into massive, hollow, concentric wheels.
Wait, so the sky is literally made of giant invisible wheels spinning around our cylinder Earth?
Yes, and these hollow wheels are filled with raging, continuous fire.
But wait, why isn't the sky just entirely on fire then?
Right, so the reason we don't just look up and see a solid wall of blazing flame is that the wheels are mostly made of an opaque, dark mist. But they have breathing holes in them.
Breathing holes?
Yeah, he explicitly compared it to the holes in a flute. What we call stars are actually just us looking through the tiny flute holes in the nearest wheel, seeing the cosmic fire trapped inside.
Wait, let's unpack this mechanism, because if the sky is just spinning flaming wheels, that completely breaks the idea of an eclipse. You can't block a giant wheel in the sky. A solar eclipse wouldn't make any sense under this model.
Ah, but he thought of that. The eclipse mechanism is actually quite clever.
Oh, really?
An eclipse happens when the physical flute hole on the sun's wheel temporarily slides shut, like a vent closing, occluding the fire.
Oh my God.
And the phases of the moon happen because the vent in the moon's wheel slowly changes its shape from an open circle to a sliver over the course of the month.
That is wild. It's all just vents opening and closing on giant fiery donuts in space.
Basically, yeah.
So we should probably mention he got the order of these wheels totally backward, right?
He did. He relied purely on visual logic, without any understanding of optics. He looked up and thought, okay, the stars look the smallest, so they must be the closest to Earth.
Which makes intuitive sense, I guess.
Right. Then comes the moon. And the sun, which looks the biggest and brightest, must be on the wheel furthest away. He even used geometry to calculate that the sun's wheel was 27 or 28 times larger than the Earth.
Okay, so he's trying to build a machine out of the universe. We have a floating rock and a mechanical sky with vents, but that leads to the next logical gap. How did life originate on this floating rock?
And here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, because, wait, he actually thought humans crawled out of the mouths of giant fish? How does a guy go from brilliant astrophysics to fish people?
I know, it sounds totally absurd to modern ears.
Yeah.
But you have to look at the deeply logical, observational pathway that got him there. Anaximander was observing biology, specifically human infancy.
Okay.
He noticed that human babies are incredibly weak and helpless for a terrifyingly long period of time. I mean, a baby horse or cow can stand up and run shortly after birth.
Sure.
A human infant requires years of intense, constant care just to not die.
Right. If you drop a helpless human infant into a harsh, wild, primeval Earth, it doesn't stand a chance. it would be eaten or freeze immediately.
That is exactly the deductive leap he made. He reasoned that the first humans could never have survived the harsh conditions of the early world in the same form we exist in now.
So they needed some kind of protection.
Right. Therefore, they must have had a different form of biological protection early on. He believed that all animal life originally sprang from the sea, born trapped in a spiny, protective bark that just dried up and broke off as they moved to land.
Okay, so life starts in the ocean. That actually tracks with modern biology.
He does.
But because human babies were too weak to survive, even with a spiny bark, he theorized they needed a surrogate womb.
Yes. He posited that the first human embryos were held prisoner, basically incubated inside the mouths of big fish, something akin to sharks.
Sharks, wow.
The humans lived safely inside these giant fish, feeding and growing, protected from the brutal early climate until they finally reached puberty. Yes. Only then, when they were physically capable of feeding and defending themselves, did the fish burst open, allowing the first humans to walk onto dry land.
I mean, he solves the biological problem of helpless human infancy by imagining teenagers bursting out of great white sharks.
It's definitely bizarre.
It is, but you can see the unyielding logic there. He recognizes a form of evolutionary adaptation driven by environmental necessity.
Which, again, highlights his incredible method. He's not saying Prometheus molded us out of clay. He is looking at empirical biological evidence, the extended helplessness of the infant, and constructing a purely naturalistic hypothesis to explain it.
Flawed, yes, but intensely rational.
Exactly.
He really was the ultimate Renaissance man, thousands of years before the Renaissance. And what I find so impressive is that his work wasn't just theoretical cosmology and shark rooms.
No, not at all.
He wanted to use geometry and natural law to tangibly improve life for the people of his time, like his map.
Absolutely. According to later geographers like Strabo, Anaximander was the very first person to publish a map of the known world.
And this wasn't just a local street map of Miletus, right?
No, he tried to mathematically represent the entire inhabited Earth.
He designed it on what was likely a slightly rounded metal surface, acknowledging the curve of the sea.
Yeah.
He placed the agency right in the center, the navel of the world, and mapped out Europe, Asia, and Libya, which is what they called Africa, all surrounded by an outer ocean.
And we really cannot overstate the geopolitical importance of this map. Miletus was a wealthy trading hub with colonies all over the Mediterranean, so a map massively improved navigation and trade.
Which is huge.
But it also had a vital defensive purpose. The Ionian city-states were deeply divided, and they were constantly facing the looming military threat of the massive Median Empire to the east.
Oh, right.
By providing a global representation of the world, Anaximander could literally show these divided Greek cities their geographic reality, urging them to unite against their common enemy.
So he was giving them the big picture to force political unity. But, once he proved that the earth and sky were governed by mechanical geometry, it created a huge problem for the priests back home.
It sure did.
Because if Zeus isn't spinning the sky, is he at least throwing the lightning? Anaximander had to explain the weather mechanically, too.
And he did, which was a direct, dangerous assault on the mythological worldview. He stated categorically that thunder is not the booming voice of a god. It is simply the physical shock of clouds colliding with each other in the wind.
And rain isn't the gods weeping or pouring buckets from the sky. He explained that rain is a product of humidity being pumped up from the earth by the heat of the sun, gathering and then falling back down.
He essentially figured out evaporation and the water cycle.
Which is incredible. And he also introduced a vital piece of technology to Greece to measure all of this, right? The gnomon.
Yes. This was essentially the vertical ride used in a sundial, an instrument that originally came from the Babylonians.
But he didn't just use it as a clock to tell the time of day. How exactly does a vertical stick let you map the cosmos?
Well, it comes down to understanding the geometry of shadows. Anaximander realized that the sun's path across the sky changes depending on the time of year.
Okay.
In the summer, the sun is much higher in the sky, so the shadow cast by the gnomon at noon is relatively short.
Makes sense.
In the winter, the sun is lower on the horizon, so the noon shadow is much longer. By meticulously tracking the exact length of these shadows over months and years, he could pinpoint the exact day the shadow was shortest, the summer solstice, and the day it was longest, the winter solstice.
So he mathematically mapped the seasons.
Exactly.
He used invisible geometry to organize human time. And this obsessive understanding of natural mechanics actually saved lives. There's this incredible anecdote recorded by Cicero. Anaximander was visiting Lacedaemon, which we know as Sparta.
Right.
And he successfully predicted a massive earthquake. How on earth did he do that without seismographs?
He didn't use magic, he used early empirical observation. He understood that earthquakes were natural mechanical ruptures in the Earth's crust, not the stomping of an angry Poseidon. While the exact details are lost, ancient historians suggest he noticed physical anomalies. He likely observed changes in animal behavior, like animals fleeing the area, or noticed steam and sulfur venting from deep wells, or felt microtremors in the ground. He read the physical signs of the Earth under stress.
And according to the story, he urgently convinced the Spartan citizens to abandon their homes. He told them to take their weapons and sleep out in the open fields.
And sure enough,
The city collapsed, and the peak of the nearby Mount Taygetus split open. He saved them because he trusted observation over superstition.
and that ultimately is his legacy.
So what does this all mean? We have a man who wrapped the world, tracked the stars with a stick, explained the rain, invented a free-floating Earth, and theorized human evolution from giant fish.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, as Carlo Rovelli argues, Anaximander is responsible for the first great scientific revolution in history. He taught humanity to abandon supernatural, magical explanations in favor of natural laws and geometry. He asserted that the universe operates by inviolable rules that we can actually discover through observation and reason.
He essentially built the scaffolding for every single scientist who came after him.
Yes. But arguably, his greatest gift wasn't any of his specific theories. After all, his universe of flaming vents and his shark-incubated humans were objectively wrong.
Very wrong.
His greatest gift was his method. He proved that true intellectual progress doesn't come from blindly accepting the teachings of the past, nor does it come from entirely discarding them. Progress comes from questioning certainty. It comes from taking the best ideas of your predecessors, finding their logical flaws, and critically improving upon them.
He looked at a civilization that was absolutely 100% certain the Earth rested on something, and absolutely certain that lightning was a weapon thrown by a bearded man in the clouds, and he dared to imagine invisible geometry and floating cylinders.
It's inspiring.
He looked past the obvious to see the hidden mechanics underneath. And that brings us back to you listening to this right now. You look around at the world today, a world built on thousands of years of scientific progress. You feel pretty confident in how things work.
We usually do.
But it makes you wonder, what fundamental, unquestioned truths of our modern worldview are we just blindly accepting right now? If we are the Thales of today, what is the water we are swimming in? What if a future Anaximander looks back at us 2,600 years from now and realizes we've been standing on our own beach, completely missing the invisible mechanics of our own reality?
It is a humbling thought. It reminds us that the search for the apeiron, for the true, boundless nature of reality, is an ongoing, eternal journey. There is always another layer to uncover, as long as we never stop questioning our assumptions.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep looking at the horizon, keep questioning the universe, and we'll catch you on the next one.